What's up? What's up? Welcome back, family. Welcome to Free Game. Um, Going live. It's the first time going live. Basically, I want to kind of talk about a couple of different topics. The first one I want to talk about Detroit Pistons and basically the success that we've been having so far. Um, is definitely you got to give props to the coach. Like he came in, he changed the culture. Um, I think they're 10-2. And they've been doing a lot without their starters, but a lot of this is going towards the coach because if anybody knows, and if you've been with us for a long time, then you realize that when he had Monty Williams, he kind of didn't have his heart into the team. And to be honest, I personally feel like he kind of seen opportunity far as the money, but he wasn't fully bought in because he had personal things going on in his life. But at the end of the day, that's your decision that you need to make. And to be honest, if you're not ready to take that that responsibility, then don't take the money. If you know for a fact that you have other obligations and those other obligations is you know, to your wife, then that's cool. That's absolutely cool. What I would recommend is if those obligations is to your wife, then let somebody else who wants to develop the players step right in. So, this is our second year with Bickerstaff, and he has completely turned around his team. I personally feel that um, we were in a good we had expectations last year, but to be honest, I think we over exceeded our expectations. So it just shows you that no one expected them to go to the playoffs last year. Coming from a 14-win year, I think it shows you that we was finding ways to lose. There's a couple of those matchups we definitely could have won, but with the wrong coach leading the team, we ran into a lot of issues. Um, but I personally feel that we are in a better spot. That Cade, Asar, Duran um, has took a huge leap, but it also shows too how deep this team is for the fact that we were 10-2 in the last two games. We had seven guys sit out, starters, like rotation players. I think there was, let's see, Ivy, Marcus Sasser, Stu, Duran, Cade, Asar. They all set out. But with them setting out, Dennis Jenkins got some run, Curtis LeVert got some run, Duncan Robinson, um, Ron, uh, Paul Reed. Like, we discovered how deep we are as a team. And to be honest, that will play better in the long run when we go to the playoffs because now you can see that we're built for the playoffs. We got a lot of depth. Um, so I'm excited, man. I feel like it's gonna get a little easy. We play the Pacers twice. Feel like that's two dubs right there. But I don't really see a lot of teams in front of us. Um, and I wouldn't be surprised if they set a couple of guys and let some of these guys that was on either two-way contracts or trying to work their way in the league get some run. Like, we're not in a rush to bring certain guys back. Not saying that we're not, but I feel like when they do, minute restrictions will be probably in place, and those guys will probably be coming off putting up 20 some minutes, if that, because we got guys that are deep. And I would love to see mix up matchups when it comes down to rotations. I want to see what it looks like when you got a SAR out there with a Dennis Jenkins and Paul Reed and Stu probably playing aside each other because they're trying to push Stu to the four. We still got Tobias Harris. Um, I feel like we are a very deep team just because we turned defense into offense. If you watch a lot of these games, most of these wins are based off of effort, and it's not just, especially these last couple of wins, is based on how much one team wants it, and it's paying off. I personally feel that over time it's just gonna get better. Like I can see the chemistry is already getting there. Um, if we keep playing with this type of heart, um, it's the sky is the limit. Now let me talk about just a couple of things that I do see they need improvement on, and I'll say um, for one issue is that I got with the team is we got way too many guards. We got a lot of guards, which is kind of a good thing. So I feel like Dennis Jenkins should be definitely that second point guard coming off the bench. Um, I feel like Curtis LeVert should be a shooting guard coming off. Within that leaves Marcus Sasser. Marcus Sasser might be a third, but when you watch Dennis Jenkins play, you don't feel nervous when he is ball handling, and when he's making plays, when he's getting others involved. And I can see him playing on the side with Cade. But I got a feeling when Ivy comes back, Ivy's going to try to fit that position. I can also see Dennis Jenkins playing on the side of Ivy because Ivy's going to probably be more of a shooting guard anyways when Jenkins is more of a true point guard. One thing about Cade is Cade can either get his own buckets as a shooting guard or he can play a point guard. Um, I want to say uh, for Ryan Holland, I love his intensity. He's definitely a dog. He's been kind of struggling these last couple of games. And to be honest, it's not just because his shot hasn't been falling. It's because, I personally feel he needs to hit the gym a little bit, put on a little bit more weight. He'll be all right because he's looking for fouls. And when you were on the ground and you don't get that call, well, now the other team is on a fast break and it's a 4-5 and it's a mismatch. And then you see everybody's pulling hezzies and everybody's jumping because of hezzies because it's four people trying to guard the other person's man when you're on the ground and you didn't get the foul call. So, I personally feel and give him a couple of years. I ain't gonna say a couple of years, about a year and a half. Put on some actual some weight, get into the gym a little bit. He already got the height. He's 6'8". He just gotta stay consistent. Gotta grow a little bit. And that's one thing that I will say Jordan had to do as well when he went up against the bad boys and how much they was, hacking him. He made it his thing to say, I'm gonna stay in the gym. K was too. K was light. When he came in the NBA, he wasn't the most athletic, but he was light. And he realized, look, it's a different ballpark. If you wanna bang, if you wanna, go heads up, you're not gonna take it easy on you. So you're gonna have to stay in that gym. And I think Ron is gonna be one of those guys that understands that. The coach is gonna push for that. Do I want him being just hitting threes? That's not his game. I mean, he can do it every so often, but how many 3-pointers do you want him to take? Same thing with Stu. I'm comfortable with saying if Stu is gonna hit any threes, let it be early enough in the game to where defense already know they have to put somebody on him and don't leave him open just because he's at the 3-point line. If he's taking 3 to 4, fine. I'm cool with that. But if you just letting it fly and you trying to have, it's 12 shots and most of them was threes, that's not your game. And same thing with Paul Reed. I know Paul Reed was 2 for 2. Um, you know, I'm okay when you are going and you're shooting and you're throwing up like 1 or 2 as a big man. But where I want you at is, playing that pick and roll, looking to pass, looking to draw attention. Because like one thing I like about Doran and Paul Reed and a lot of the players on our team, even Isaiah Stewart, is when they do try to draw attention to the rack, they know how to kick it out. They're finding their shooters out, or they're finding somebody cutting. That's the beautiful part about this team that makes life easy. If everybody don't have to be shooters, but if everybody can be playmakers and they see their second man cutting, if they see a Sar cutting or they see Ryan cutting, well, guess what? They'll easily make the best pass. Um, one thing I like about that last game too was I felt like Karis LeVert was he was kind of like waking up a little bit. He was getting the feel of the Detroit Pistons, turning defense to offense, and he was getting a little bit more comfortable in his bag. He was being more aggressive with his shot as well. That's kind of one thing I want to see is and he kind of started off slow. Everybody was talking about Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson has been awesome. I mean, he's just not a 3 and D. He is somebody who can get his own bucket. He knows exactly. Some of his shots have been crazy too. It's not been an easy shot, but he's been making it happen. Um, but I feel like Karis LeVert, he's looking like how he did in Atlanta, and if he's gonna play like this with Green, the great pickup of Green, man, you know, I feel like um we play so smart because we know how to turn defense into offense. And Green, he fits right in. Like it's been a couple of times where he had like 3 blocks in one game, but then it's not the blocks that's so crazy. He's turning it into straight up offense. He was having a heat check moment, same as Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert. Like and Paul Reed, they'll go off and they have these moments to where teams can't try to figure out who's going to have the hot hand. When you got multiple guys that on a given night can be your top scorer, and I mean, I'm comfortable with like their shooting, like that's crazy. That's going to open it up for a lot of different players, and we gotta it's crazy what our team is doing right now. When you still got a Malik Beasley who is saying he's hinting that he still wants to come back to a team, and if he could, he want to come back to the Detroit Pistons. You know, I'm like, what would they do? I'm trying to figure out what would it look like. Do you keep Chaz Lanier as somebody that want to get so many minutes so often, or do you push him in the G League, let him grow a little bit? But I feel like Chaz Lanier has been pretty good. He's had limited minutes, but when I see him out there, he plays big. He's got good defense. He stays in front of his man. He's been creating defense, turning into offense. His shot looks very quick. Um, I just feel like we have so many actual players that can step right in and they feel and they look comfortable. A lot of teams can't say that. So, my prediction is when Duran and them they come back around, it's okay. We can do minute restriction. To be honest, we got this in the bag where yeah, we're gonna let Cade eat when he comes back and he's gonna go off because he is our star and we want him to make an all-star. We want Duran to make an all-star, you know? So I will see them getting heavy minutes. Um, but also I will see other guys uh play that role of a little bit here, a little bit there. Because once you are deep as a team and your coach is everybody's bought in, I mean, the sky is the limit to when it comes down to the playoffs. Um, yeah, I mean, just straight up good team effort. Um, I think it was players out there that was it's like they all were bought in. No matter if they came, if they did 3 minutes, they all kind of contribute to winning basketball. And I got to thank Philadelphia because they let Paul Reed go. They thought they were good. They said we got Drummond, we got Embiid. No shade to Drummond or Embiid, but at the end of the day, Embiid is about availability. If you're not out there, then how much are you giving them if you're not out there and you injured? Drummond, he played okay, but to be honest, I seen Dennis Jenkins, put a little bit of defense on him because he was trying to drive it up and he double dribbled. That's the littlest things that you see. Now, talking about Dennis Jenkins, man, this guy, um, I mean, what a Cinderella story, man. Came from the G League, wasn't drafted. He's like our Austin Rivers or Austin Reeves. Yeah, Austin Reeves. Like this guy, um, he controls the game at his own pace, but he's super athletic. He plays pretty big. You'll see him get a couple of blocks, play solid defense. But the biggest thing with him is it's been times where he literally will um have like two turnovers and he's playing like 30 some minutes. That's very hard to do, especially if you have like 12 or double digits on assists. Um, he is somebody when he drives to the rim, he literally can see three different options that he can do. Either he can do a lob to your big, he's seeing his shooters, or he's gonna take the basket for himself, and he's confident with his shot. I mean, clearly he's hit a buzzer beater at a 3-point line across court, but he also hit um a what was it? I think that not the Chicago, the Washington game. He hit a buzzer beater there, and it's like you know he's doing it all, man. He's somebody that if you don't pay attention, he will catch you sleeping. So I think the Pistons are in a good spot. I've seen people ask the question like, do they need to trade? Do they want to trade? Do I feel like they need to trade? Personally, I don't think so. I think teams, there's desperate teams out there, and to be honest, that's good for us. Like, there's teams that need point guards. There's a team that might need a power forward. If there's any, I feel like, I don't want to see no one leave from this team. But what do you feel like? I really don't want to let anybody go. I've seen talks about, Tobias Harris and saying like if he, uh, somebody they would trade or Marcus Sasser if he's come back. But, I feel like they're in good rotations. With Marcus Sasser, I feel like if it's money out there and it's a better opportunity for him to get some run, okay, that makes sense because we have a lot of guards. And you know, at the end of the day, he has to get paid. Tobias Harris has already got paid, but his leadership and his veteran experience going in playoff runs is going to hold some value. Um, I feel like what I want to see, I would love to see Bobby Clinton step it up a little bit on effort. He's already got a good solid IQ. I just feel like he just want to make sure he's bringing it every single night on the effort side. Um, but yeah, that's what I got for y'all for my Detroit Pistons. Yeah, can't wait for the next game. Yeah, but I want to talk about the Lions. I think so far Laporta, I think he's out with an injury. They actually got a card a few guys that's out for injuries. But you know, one thing I'm learning about the Detroit Lions is that we are a good team, but the only issue we have is we tend to put our foot off the gas when we have a bye week. And it's not like the NBA, it's not like baseball Where if you lose a game, you can still be in it. When it comes to the playoffs, the Lions got to figure out to keep that same intensity when they have a bye week or if they're the number one in the division. Because what I've seen so far, it's not like the talent isn't there. It's not like the plays aren't there. It's just the effort is not there. It takes a while to get that engine started. And that's the part that I'm making. Like you gotta they have to figure out a way to strike the iron when it's hot and keep that momentum going. Because the year before I had the best record. I had a bye week before the playoffs, and I think that crushed us. I don't know what they're doing on their bye weeks, but that comes with experience and playoff experience, um, where you know how to keep that momentum and effort and keep your body ready when you have a little bit of time off. And it's a couple people that can do it. The greats can definitely do it. We're working on getting there. We're not there yet. So until then, I don't want us to, you know, yeah, we might win some, lose some, but that's the one thing that I've noticed, especially with that game that we did lose. And when we came back the following, we played the Commanders. I mean, it was a completely different story. Um, Completely different story. Um, the Lions played. Um, it was an all around beautiful game. One thing I gotta say from that actual game was the fact that they actually set their guys. Um, because that's just one thing I never understood was if anything, sit your guys if you're in the fourth quarter and you're up and you're blowing out the team, or if you are losing, sit your guys. It don't make sense to let them get to play and they might get injured. I get it. Some people have fantasy football. They're looking for certain numbers. That's cool, but we looking for deep playoff runs and to get a Super Bowl, bring a Super Bowl to the city of Detroit. Um, so do I expect them? Let's see. We play the Giants next Sunday. Thanksgiving, we play the Packers. Then we play the Cowboys, the Rams, and the Steelers. Um, is there any throwaway games? Um, to be honest, as long as it's not in our division, like if it's not, for example, the Giants. If the Giants came around and won, I'm not tripping. Not in our division. The record is 2-8. Who cares? Cowboys. I'm sorry. We got to beat the Cowboys. We got to beat the Cowboys because not just because they're. It's not about the division with the Cowboys. It's the fact that we did go to the playoffs. We faced the Cowboys, and clearly we lost that game. This is when we had Calvin Johnson, Matt Stafford, and the referees. We played against the Cowboys and the referees. So still got a grudge with that game. So Cowboys gotta be a dub. Ram, they gotta be a dub. They already got a good record. I want us to go against good competition and win. I don't care about the bad competition. I want us to go against good, solid competition and get a W. Steelers. I think we should get a dub there. Vikings and the Bears both should be dubs. So I see us going deep. We can definitely keep our foot on the on the gas. We just can't let them get comfortable. We got so many weapons on offense. Um, you know, it's to the point where I think they started using Jameis Williams. Not with the Commanders, even though they did use him with the Commanders. The game that they lost I feel like against the Vikings, they actually started using, yeah, against the Vikings. And it just shows you that we're deep as a team. We got so many options that we are completely, you know, that's not our problem. Um, Defensive wise, I feel like it's all effort. And that's what I was telling you. If you gonna keep it, if it's, you're gonna keep that effort up, we should have no issues. And watch our injuries. That's the biggest thing. Um, so yeah, I'm excited to see what they'll do. Um, like I said, I'm hoping we really don't need to shoot for the number one in our division. We just got to get there. I just don't ever, like I said, I don't want them to have a week off. I've seen them too many times have a week off and they struggle because of it. Um, yeah, but with that being said, like I said, Lions are playing tomorrow, Sunday, and then we also play Thanksgiving, play against Green Bay Packers. That should be a pretty good game. So, I want to talk about a couple of different movies. I actually just left a premiere. Um, my cousin, uh, Mikey and his wife, they had their a movie that they wrote, directed, had their own crew to film. This is their second one that they did, and it was actually pretty good. I think that they really they're putting their foot on the gas because they have did this already. The last movie had majority of all family members. My wife, including myself, was in it. Um, it was called "We Are Still Family," and really good movie. I recommend people to go and watch it. Um, and the No Strings is the most recent movie, and it's good. I don't want to spoil nothing. I can't spoil nothing. It will, like, I will say that some things in the movie I was definitely like, yeah, those are things that are really kind of going on. It's crazy, it's sad, but those are things that's kind of going on in the field, for people, for some people. And I'm just saying that based on what I see on the internet. Like, some people are going through the same things that you will see in this movie. And I feel like it was really good writing. One thing I love when I watch a movie is when they introduce something early in the movie and they circle back to it later on. And they did that so many times that if you wasn't paying attention, you probably wouldn't ever notice. But if you didn't notice, it was so much entertaining that it didn't matter because you were being entertained. Um, so yeah, I personally feel like they did a really excellent job. They really executed on making this movie. Um, like I said, filmed in Detroit, and then I think they filmed in Ohio as well. Actually had a lot of family still in this movie. Um, it was just really good to see. The music was pretty good. I think the um, Rich, he's the one that actually filmed, did all the video, but guess what? He did a lot of the music was his music, and it sounded pretty good. I mean, like like I said, all around flawless, very professional, clean, um, movie with a message too. Um, but I'm not gonna spoil nothing. I'm gonna let it get some run once it's actually out. And then I'll probably go into details about that movie. Next movie I want to talk about is called Predator. Uh, this last Predator movie has, to be honest, I thought was excellent. Um, you don't got to worry about spoiler alerts because I'm not about to be trying to spoil the movie. But I will say that um, there's a movie on Hulu called called Predator, Kill or Be Killed, and let me double check. Okay, so yeah, The one that just came out is called Predator Badlands. Really good movie. Recommend a lot of people go see it. Um, but the one that came out before that, it was actually an animation, but it was really, really dope. And I will talk about that one. Okay. The biggest thing with that movie that I noticed was it showed different time periods of Predator. The reason why they call it Predator because they would go after whoever feels like they're the alpha and top killer. They wasn't going after people who were vulnerable. I mean, if you stood in the way, and I mean, you would catch whatever they was throwing, but usually they targeted people who were a specialist and a top killer in their field. So you'll see them go back in days where they're talking about the Vikings. And this one lady, she was a beast. And like at every little story, it deals with um somehow she uh had to face off with one of the predators and she ends up killing him. And they capture her because of that. Like they invite her in. And then you feel like it so it fast forwards and it goes to where they're in Japan. Well, now in Japan, it's the same kind of story. You got two brothers, samurais, and the story is that like one was trying to assassinate his other brother, and the predator was watching everything, and he was going after whoever was the top killer between them two. So that was his story. And then he gets captured. And then the last one was somebody in the war. It was like a World War II, and he had it was over a fighter jet, and he was able to take down one of the fighter jets. And basically, like it showed like why they were taken, and at the end they all end up having to work together. But it was dope because it kind of showed you too the characteristics of the predator and why they do the things that they do, who they go after. So I feel like watch that movie first on Hulu and then go check out in the Badlands. You're gonna love the ending. You're gonna love the whole character development. That's one thing I like about certain movies is I want to see character development. I don't want somebody to be stagnant or when I had these conversations, some people might not like to watch um the Badlands, or they might not want to watch this Predator movie because they were thinking it's gonna be like the old Predator movies where there's no growth as a character. And I can tell you now, like there's plenty of growth um in this movie as a character. So yeah, please go check it out. Like I said, you're really gonna like it. Another movie that I checked out, it's called Tron. Tron was kind of crazy of a concept because if you've never seen the original, um, and the original was actually pretty good, but this one was different just because this time around they were bringing the digital world to the real world, which is crazy because how much you have with 3D printing and you have with AI and you have with certain apps and businesses. And I'm not talking about Palantir and all that other stuff, but you have like awkwardly enough in this day and age incentive for like something like this to actually happen. But I feel like personally, um, the movie was actually pretty good. It was good action, good story. They gave reference to the old original Tron. Um, and I mean that would be a crazy concept. It was also dope that they had two visions of what that could look like, which that's the reality. There's always two sides of the coin. Either you can bring war and destruction um, through a video game, where you can bring something that's actually, peaceful and dope. And that was kind of part in, like, in the movie, like when they were chasing after the girl, like her concept of bringing things from a um digital world was, it wasn't tanks and soldiers. So yeah, please go check that movie out. Neutron. It's actually really dope. Recommend it. Um, but yeah, I feel like it's a couple other movies that I gotta go see. Um, I did watch The Machine with The Rock. Man, crazy, 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 crazy. Watching that movie was, it was sad, man. It was sad because, like, growing up, I do feel like you see a lot of and this was about like UFC fighters. It wasn't about like wrestlers and something like that. But the fact that you do see people who will get opioid dependent, and sometimes because of that, their personality, it's just stuff that they cannot control, and how it plagues them mentally, and what they deal with when it comes down to the weight on their shoulders just because of the stress of those drugs. And you have people who are around them that will enable you to be taking these drugs. You know, is crazy. But the mechanic is actually, or the machine was actually really dope. I felt like it was a good movie. After a while, it's funny when people are like, "Oh, I didn't know that." Like, he sounds just like The Rock. He looks a little bit different. Like, yeah, he put on a mask and everything, but you can definitely tell it was The Rock. But yeah, I recommend people to go see that movie. The struggles with him and his wife, going back and forth, the domestic abuse, um, the drug abuse, um, the issues that come up with because of all of that, and the pressure that can lead to potential suicide and all this other stuff. It's like very deep movie. Didn't expect some of the things in the struggles that they would show, but there's wrestlers that dealt with that. So WWE, where some people took their life, took their family's life, and it's sad, man. You know, I think steroids is definitely it's an addiction and it's a curse. A lot of people don't, they get hip or they get addicted to it. It's just like dopamine or sugar. So I definitely recommend that movie. Go check it out. Um, definitely think it was dope. Um, so that being said, I want to talk about um, I want to talk about economics a little bit, just a little bit of economics. I want to talk about all the different things kind of going on um, in the world of economy. So basically, you know, obviously you should know by now. I think the government is open. Let me double check because, to be honest, it's been shut down for over a month. But when it comes down to economics, there's more things in play just because of the government shutdown. Um, yeah. So before, yeah, it says the longest government shutdown in the U.S. history is over. So before I go off and start talking about this government shutdown, which is crazy, it's crazy because what they decided to do was something that was on the table from day one. So a lot of people were kind of mad because they were saying, if you're gonna shut the government down, then you can't negotiate, or why ever negotiate for something that they brought up on day one? That right there don't make sense. But economy wise. Um, I personally feel that uh, tariffs are they can help if they were done right, and they can hurt if they're done wrong. And the one thing I would tell people is you don't want to be in a situation of isolation. When you isolate yourself around from the world, and if you know other countries are already trying to move off the physical dollar, then at the end of the day, to create GDP and growth in your economy, you need to focus and be strong on exports. But you can't bully your way through and try to export based on bullying. So if you go through and you do things to create friction. For example, if you try to sanction another country, which we've done in the past based on social reasonings, and you weaponize the dollar, well, then you push people off the physical dollar. And our dollar was backed by trust. We had the gold standard, we had the petroleum standard, and then we had something called trust, knowing that whatever you get, it's trust there that it's this that's that value will be what that value is. But what we had with the pandemic is we put out stimulus checks. We put out $2 trillion worth of stimulus checks. Now, uh, the problem with stimulus checks, right? So, $2 trillion went out to everybody who was an adult. Now, for those who was working and those who wasn't. Now, for those who were working, at the end of the day, had to pay that money back in stimulus checks because they had to pay higher taxes, their mortgages went up, the rent went up, the bills of groceries, gas, every expense went up because of inflation. You put $2 trillion into the economy for inflation, and the ones who are working has to foot the bill. So the issue I have is a lot of times, if you're asking for a stimulus check, then you're gonna be a prisoner of the moment because that's temporary. And you can't it's gonna be hard for anybody to um, short term, you know, you gotta pay it back some way. The only option that he gave people for their mortgages to say what we can lower your mortgages is to keep you in renting forever. A 50-year mortgage is you renting for the rest of your life, and you will have no ownership. And when you're done renting, well, the city or the bank or yeah, the bank basically the bank will take your house and they'll do the same thing that they did to you, and there will be no ownership. Now, the fact that AI has already gone and misplaced a lot of different people's jobs, a lot of jobs that was promised to come back, I never seen those jobs coming back. People put too much money in the stock of AI, and people who own AI said they're too big to fail. So that lets you know that I'm sorry, the reality is you are training your own replacement. You're building your replacement. And the issue with that is then you take all that GDP, all that spending, what made our money grow in the first place. You can't put tariffs on another country based off of what we buy. And then you give no one jobs or money to buy the things that you just placed the tariff on. And then you say you want to give stimulus checks of $2 trillion or $2,000, but you have no one that can work. So to purchase any of these things, so tariff that money from tariffs can go up. That's the problem. Okay. At the end of the day, billionaires or trillionaires, because it gets to a point where people can be trillionaires, they don't want to foot the bill and bail anybody out. So if they don't want to foot the bill to bail you out, but majority of your jobs consist of pretty much being obsolete the way things are going, like It don't matter if you were in a white collar or blue collar. Like, I think a service job, like, to be honest, I would say a firefighter, a police officer, a in the hospital, some type of job based off of service is harder to replace than a lot of these other jobs and businesses, you know. And that's just my thing. I say get something that's a security, that's a necessity, that's a need for a functional society to run. The problem is people don't want government jobs because they realize they can't depend on the government staying open. And if they don't stay open, well, what happens is, you know, what happens to if they get laid off and it's over a month and that rent is due? I mean, you're gonna get back pay, but I don't think they're gonna, uh, you know, you might lose your job, house, you know, your car note. Like it's the reality of things that they don't slow down just because you're not getting paid. Those bills not gonna stop. Bills gonna still keep coming, and it's a tightening of finances of what you're seeing. When you see retail dollars is more so out of the stock market. The difference between crypto and the stock market is like you can track cryptocurrency, meaning you can track transactions. The problem with tracking transactions is at some point you can tax on those transactions. So if you was to lend somebody money, they might get taxed just because you lent somebody some money. So, the thing with the stock market is you can realize, and I look at when people do puts and buy options and they, hedge funds, and, somebody is betting on the market or they can bet that it's going to collapse. See what the prices is looking like. People are trying to short the market. But the reality is you can kind of tell if, you know, people are betting that something will collapse. And like I said, the fact that majority of um, investors are putting all of their stock into AI, into one sector, one category, that's kind of dangerous. It's not like it's spread across and, real estate is taking off or automotive industry is taking off or any other form of the tech industry, banks, the banking sector is taking off. Like, there's a lot of other different sectors um, that can cause the look at the S&P and see where growth can come from. But if it's all based on what is something that can replace you as a job, yeah, who's going to afford any other services or things that you're selling? That's the purpose. That's the part that people might be missing. So, the economy is in a very weird spot, you know, and for those, I always tell people, work on trying to build something yourself, have ownership, something you build from the ground up. Try to diverse when you do investments. Have a little bit of money here, a little bit of money there. Some money that's for long term, some money that's for short term. Um, and then put money back into things that you want to work on and you want to build on yourself. The biggest thing is you want to build something for yourself and for your future. So, there's different ways you can do it. Like, for example, podcasting, creating music, you know, creating dope art and then printing it off. Um, you know, and then for individuals who love to grind it out, they don't want to be in front of no camera and stuff like that. I tell people welding, plumbing, electrician, a home inspector. Like, me as a respiratory therapist, man, I love my job. This is like being a patient advocate. Didn't know how much I would love my actual job, but I love it to help other individuals. Like, and that's a part of the reason why the podcast I have is called Just Breathe. It's a respiratory section on that podcast. It's basically to focus on what people might not know what a respiratory therapist go through, or the different things you might come across, the people you might save. Like, there's definitely, like, once or twice a day, I'm making a difference in somebody's life. Like, with my decisions that's not being made, or my decisions that is being made, I am saving a life. You know, I work in the surgical, I work in cardiopulmonary, I work with the neonates, and when I pick up a child, and sometimes the other facility might not be the most confident. Like, I'm one of those people who will step in if needed. I don't believe that it needs to be too many chefs in the kitchen. So if you are running everything smoothly, then yeah, I'm gonna let you cook. I'm gonna let you do your thing. But if I know for a fact that you making some missteps, I'm telling you, my presence will be felt. I'm gonna let you know straight up what's going on, what you're doing wrong, and what you need to do to self correct. Because I believe I got 12 hours of a shift, and I'm not going to experience a cold situation just because of mistakes was being made. So, my job is we do a lot of education. We get a lot of students. We get a lot of sometimes we have residents and we have fellows that will shadow us as well. They want to learn about CPAP trials. They want to learn about weaning, learn about trachs, proper trachs. Um, you know, a lot of different things when it comes down to respiratory, different modes on ventilators. I'm not going to recommend something without explaining my recommendations. I had this patient, and the best thing I've seen was, you know, my team, my ICU team feels confident when you go in and you make a decision and you just tell them, like, hey, this is what I did. You get a blood gas in about 30 minutes to an hour. And then when they get that gas, they were like, wow, okay, clearly this is working. And let's continue to do what you're recommending. That's my day being a patient advocate. I come in and I actually get to tell them, like, hey, this is what I recommend for we have a successful day of getting this person off the ventilator. My whole goal is to get somebody to go home, not to be stuck in the hospital. Most people don't recommend, oh, well, they was stuck there for a long time. Like, no, the goal is for you to make it home and to encourage others. I always tell them, you should write a book. No one can tell your story better than yourself. So for each individual, you know, to write, I'm a advocate for writing. I write myself. My thing is poetry. I like to read the Bible. I like to look at different things going on in the world. I used to be an extreme fan of history. That's why when we talk about economics, and I can go in depth about different empires. They all crumbled based on economics. Look at the Roman Empire, look at the Spaniard Empire, everything in Europe before World War II or World War One. Like, all these empires had global dominance when it came down to finances. The problem is they overextended themselves and they could not pay their military. If you can't pay your military, you can't pay people to do these services because the value of what you're paying them is going down, then I'm sorry, you have your foundation of a nation will crumble. I mean, that's just history. As if you are a fan of history or if you're naive, you don't believe it, you can look it up for yourself. And they say history will repeat. You got to make sure that you can't just send somebody. When we have these government shutdowns, it's a temporary moment of experiencing that. When you have a government shutdown, it's like It's like testing the system. It's like seeing, you know, will they still actually still go to work and not get paid? You guys should really look up why the fall of the empire, of the Roman Empire. You overextend and then you can't pay no one. That's the problem. But like I said, fan of history, fan of writing. Biggest thing is writing poetry. Um, a huge fan of this, like I said, going through the Bible, wrote about deception, about what deception looks like, how people go around this world trying to deceive. Um, and I wrote about transformation. You gotta look about what transformation means when you accept, Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. You gotta talk about that's one thing when I read the Bible, when I go through different stories, I like to see what happened before the blessings happened. I want to see what happened before the miracles happened. I want to see what was the state of the world, what was going on. Why did things have to happen? Um, and you get more, I get more out of it understanding, well, these things had to happen. That's the same thing of saying, like, when fate meets faith. These things had to happen for the outcome of, like, that happens in the Bible. And that's just the reality. Some things just don't happen just because you gotta have certain things take place. So, you know, that's what my writing is basically about. And then obviously I got a section of called free game where I just go through, listen to different instrumentals, write topics, and then I go off of those topics. Um, but before I get off of here, I want to say, hopefully, people, put some money up if you can. Try to save at least. They used to say 1 or 2 paychecks for like a rainy day. I'm seeing 3 months worth of rent. Save up 3 months worth of rent so you can figure it out. You got enough time to where you can figure it out. You ain't struggling. You ain't, you know, Then, I recommend have different platforms that you put your money into savings. Now I use what's it, Acorn, and because I'm on the younger side, be aggressive. I usually do large cap companies like Vanguard, stock index, and I try to get away from bonds because you ain't making no money on them. And then to be honest, if other countries plan on selling their debt, and then those bonds is just gonna be worthless. One thing I'll tell you is most of the time people don't realize their dollars ain't making them no money if they're sitting in a savings account. How fast inflation will and has been increasing, that same $10 or $100 ain't the same that it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So that lets you know if your money's not growing in value, then it's losing value. And that means you're losing money just by placing it in a savings account. You got to look at it from all different angles. You got to make sure that you're putting your money into something that will grow over time, that's going to offer you dope dividends and will pay you. And then also, while you making these purchases in life, try to use your credit card so you can get those points. Those points convert to actual cash. You use that cash to place investments and things that might offer dividends, and you grow from there. It's so many different ways you can maneuver. But the first thing is you got to get what's called security. I always tell people a job is cool, but get your security. Get you something that's consistent, something that you can rely on. After you do that, then try to do something that's extra. For example, creating YouTube, a Patreon, they got a Pinterest, they got an Instagram, business Facebook, um, TikTok as well. Substack is where I'm. So all of these things are extra. The blessing of me having stability is I'm not forcing myself to push myself to have to do this at a certain deadline. That's the goal. Another thing is Substack for me, it's gonna be pretty much everything dealing with art. So if I create something dope on Canva, I'm gonna probably publish it on there. Because I also love to take photos, I'm gonna probably publish more so of those photos on Substack. Because I love to write music and I love to write poetry. I'm possibly gonna be doing most of my poetry on Substack. You gotta have a vision, and then you have to have a way to execute on that vision. On YouTube and on X, those are gonna be my places where either I'm gonna be kicking free game, I'm gonna be gaming on you know Call of Duty, PS5. I might be doing game reviews, and I'll be also giving my advice on different things. You know, things that I come across, things that I feel like it holds value in this world. I might be doing video reviews. There's a lot of crazy, crazy, crazy video reviews, and I also will be giving. It's gonna be videos breaking down of what am I using to create the videos that I'm making, so people can get the secret sauce. So if they want to create for themselves, they can. What's easier? Mistakes I made and mistakes I haven't made. Um, but yeah, I feel like it's easy to build for yourself after you created some stability. So when I talk about my bag is, like I said, I was talking about my faith, what it means to be a Christian. And I have deep conversations at work with my sister, my wife, um, and everyone my patients. We have deep conversations, and I always tell people, it's one thing to go to church on every Sunday. It's another thing to read the Bible. It's another thing to try to implement and reflect those traits that's in the Bible on a day-to-day basis. I always tell people the one thing that you give and you take is memories. You give memories to others, and you also take memories that you keep with you in this life and unto the next. So you don't want to be plagued by memories of you doing somebody wrong, or you trying to get over, or you acting into to greed, or you have a lustful nature that's not just lusting after. Um, People think lust is always tied into something dealing with sex, but lust can also be you lusting after the world. And that's the thing is people tie themselves to, you know, the vanity of the world, and a lot of times that's where they get lost at. And I'm like, look, the purpose is to experience the journey of life, not to be plagued in stagnation and caught up in be a prisoner of the moment of it. You people fight so much to get to the destination till they realize when they get to the destination, they didn't show no appreciation for the journey. And you gotta appreciate the journey, you know. And you gotta start looking up and characteristics of what it means to be a Christian and to follow Christ. It also means you need to know Him. You need to ask God and pray for discernment. You can't pray for materialistic things and things that other people idolize. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Is people will pray for things that others idolize, and I'm like, where does that make sense? Like, where does that make sense? You pray for finances and income, and people idolize that. You know, a lot of times you realize You know, blessings will come if you genuinely are trying to bless others. And that's the thing people got to focus on. You focus more on if you genuinely are trying to bless others and help somebody else, um, then it's a lot that you don't have to worry about if it's genuine. But a lot of times, if you're doing something because you're trying to get something out of it, it's not truly in your heart to be meek and be selfless instead of selfish, then those things are something that you might have to deal with in the long term. So I personally feel like it's things that people can actually uh learn, but you gotta know what sacrifice look like. People people don't realize that when you get older, it's no greater sacrifice than you can do for others. It's no greater feeling. Like I always tell people, we get so caught up on. I've said this before. We get so caught up on the messenger instead of focus on the message. The words bear fruit, and it means have your words changed somebody's outcome? You made somebody pivot. Like I used to go to church, and I used to see when people was preaching there was prosperity and everything was there for a show, and I couldn't relate to it. But then I also went to church where people was teaching, and you felt like you was being fed because you felt like you were being led in the right direction. You felt like you was getting taught how life should be lived. It's going through the book of Leviticus, and it was showing different ways, um, what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. Gave you some structure and some discipline in your life that you needed, that you didn't know you needed. And you start reading the book of Matthews and Luke, and then you start having a clear understanding of what Jesus was doing when he was here. Why it was so important not just to reach out to Gentiles, but get your fellow Hebrews in line. Because at the end of the day, people don't realize, and people should realize at this point, I feel like that um the Pharisees, they had their own followers chanting to crucify Jesus as well as themselves. And that's why I always tell people, you got to be careful. I feel like you got to be careful about um, who you fan over, because this fandom world we live in, where people love to fan over things, they don't realize it's the same thing as worship. And you shouldn't be trying to. You can appreciate somebody. Appreciation is different. But when you fan over somebody, and then whatever they say goes, then it's no difference than you worshiping that person. And that's the fear that you gotta have, because you don't want to make that mistake. You don't want to get caught up in um worshiping somebody just because you never understood what being a fan, what that really meant. And you have false idols. Like if you ever watch where two people was going head to head, for example, like a Drake or Kendrick Lamar. And in one instance, one person said something, everybody rock with it, and they act on it. Well, the Pharisees, you gotta remember, we chastised so much of the Romans. The Romans did do what they did, but they did also offer opportunity to free one of the prisoners, and Jesus was one of them that they planned on freeing. It was the Pharisees, the own Hebrews, they didn't like what Jesus was doing because it was messing them up from a business money standpoint. That's why when they say the money is the root of all evil, well, those finances that was feeding those pockets to those Pharisees, and Jesus, like he didn't like that they were monetizing off of what it means to be a a Christian, but a holy people. He gonna monetize off of God. He wasn't down for it. So, you know, if you go through, and they talk about when they were chanting, it was regular folks that was chanting too, because those regular folks looked up to Pharisees. It's like seeing somebody with cars and rims and his big old house, and you look at him, you're like, oh man, he must be doing something right. So whatever he's doing, you're gonna try to implement. And the problem with that is when you try to implement that, you kind of putting yourself at risk. You following somebody who already had, like what I said, a lustful nature of the world, anything that money can buy. So, personally, like I said, your relationship with God is a personal relationship. You should be able to call on God anytime you need Him, but also you should know how to pray, and it means asking for discernment, praying over others, asking for strength, guidance, wisdom, make the right choices, ask for your will to be God's will. So caught up in free will that we don't realize that the choices that you make, sometimes it can be a gift and a curse. It all depends on what kind of prisoner of the moment, attitude you gonna have. You might say something that's completely crazy, and then you end up being a prisoner of the moment because of it. So you gotta be you gotta be careful. I feel like you definitely got to be careful. Um, but you know, I can go on and on. Um, talking about the word, talking about the Bible, because there's so many stories in there. Like I said, this is reasons why you can't not judge others. There's so many stories of broken people that God chose to fix, people who were sinners. They made mistakes, but when they got humbled and at a humbling beginning or a humbling ending, they found God, and forgiveness was there because God had to forgive them to even use them. So when Jesus came back and he's preaching about forgiveness, loving thy neighbor, true forgiveness is it's not supposed to be easy. Forgiveness is about those who probably hurt you or hurt your loved ones. It's true forgiveness. It's not just because you forgiving your own loved one, somebody that you already care for. It's somebody that you don't have no relationship, no connection to. But people don't understand it. I think people like to, like I say, you like to pacify the sermon, so people might not have no clarity, no understanding. But all they do is they'll remember the gospel song that was playing, but they might not have no understanding of what Moses did before he became what we know Moses of, or who Saul became Paul, or who even if you look at the book of Job, things that he had to go through, trials and tribulations, constantly being plagued with you know like tests. That's the thing. People think it's supposed to be easy. It ain't. For your things you call your testimony, it's not gonna be easy. So, but I'm about to get up off of here. Make sure I check in with y'all a little bit later. Like I said, make sure you like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. But also make sure you check me out on Substack and we'll be getting on there posting more. To be honest, what I'm about to do, I think I might just put the whole Deception and transformation on there. Break it up, have it already on there, and then later on I might drop the singles where I go into detail, going off on the lyrics, and do it that way. Now, free game, I could do it that way, but I got so much free game when it comes down to music. It's kind of crazy. And out of all, I think I got like 100 and something different poems. I think Fate is my one of my ones that I like the most, just because it's personal. It really talk about all the things you go through in life and how you got to where you are at. And you thinking that you might be an introvert and by yourself, you realize you're not. And it's a great feeling when you realize that you're not by yourself. So Fate is dope. Um, yeah. And I will be continuing to talk about my Detroit Pistons on this series of winnings. You know, we came from humble beginnings. Um, yeah, but talk to y'all later. Peace.